Okay. Is everybody ready? I'm Citrus County Sheriff Mike Prendergast. I want to thank all of you for coming here today to Crystal River and to experience what we've been experiencing since the early hours of this morning when all of this storm surge started to come into our county and make its way towards some of the very historic places all throughout the west side of our county here. Now, as the National Weather Service predicted, we were going to see some kind of storm surge here in Citrus County. They were anticipating storm surge that was worse than what we saw in the no-name storm and worse than what we saw during Hurricane Hermine back in 2016. We have not reached that ultimate high tide that we're expecting to see today. We've got about an hour and a half or so before that high tide reaches here, and they're actually expecting some more of that wind-driven water to come back on in and make our life a little bit more difficult through the remainder of the daylight hours that we've got. And on top of that, of course, you've seen some of our vessels that are going out here doing high water rescues. You've seen our LMTV, it's an Army surplus vehicle that we've taken and deployed out there to get into some of these high water areas to get some of those folks out of harm's way, remove them from a scene that's just uninhabitable now because of the storm surge water that penetrated their homes and penetrated their way of life that they've got over here on the west side of the county. Now, earlier today, we were told by the power companies that we have about 3,300 folks without power, 3,300 customers. We do have 3 power companies here in the county, and as the day unfolds and as things continue to develop on the west side of the county, there may be many other thousands of folks who've experienced a power outage, but they just might not know it because they're on a part of the county where they did evacuate and heed our very stern warnings to get out of harm's way, to protect their lives and protect the family members that are important to them. And then as we continue to get through this here, we'll have some very significant updates about the number of folks we've rescued. Thus far, we've rescued about 60 folks that did not evacuate before the storm surge water came in here. And virtually everything on the west side of Highway 19 here in Citrus County probably has some water damage and some significant penetration into the homes, because we know that the 8 to 12 feet that was predicted by the National Weather Service certainly made its presence known on the west side of the county, and I think we're going to see it for a long time to come, because some of this water that came in is not going to naturally leave the county because it comes over roads and it comes into other areas and inundates some of those low-lying areas, and we're just not going to be able to get that water to go away very quickly. I do believe we've seen about the last of the rain associated with Hurricane Idalia, and I do believe that the winds are died down sufficiently enough where we can actually go out and do an aerial overflight and do a preliminary aerial damage assessment, which we're going to do as soon as we conclude this news conference. And then we'll be sharing all of that information with all of the news media folks who would like to have that, and also sharing that with our partners at the Division of Emergency Management up in Tallahassee and our FEMA partners that are looking for this information as well. The last thing that I can tell you is a great many of us have been up for more than 24 hours. Some folks have been up for 36 to 48 hours making the preparations for this storm. And we may want to stop for a minute and allow those airboats to come up here and discharge some of their passengers that are being rescued. So we'll take a pause here tactically to stop, just to let them get those passengers off of the vessels that we've rescued, and then get them onto our shelter over here.
So you rescued about 60 people?
Thus far, about 60 that we can account for, but there may be... They're all west side residents. Almost all of them are on the west side of Highway 19, and so far the rescues have been concentrated around the Crystal River area. We do have boats down in the Homosassa area, and we've seen some of the footage down there, and the inundation down there is breathtaking considering where I was last night, and the water probably came up 6 feet from where I was down there last night in the Homosassa area along the river, right on the banks of the river by Crumps.
You saw a truck with people in it. Those were the people that had been rescued.
Yeah, those were folks that we picked up with our Sheriff's Office high water rescue vehicle, that Army surplus vehicle that we bought for uses just such as these whenever we need to get into some areas that have a lot of standing water.
And these airboats, are these yours too, or are these?
That one is mine. That belongs to the Citrus County Sheriff's Office. We've got a couple of others from some of our employees that we've asked them to come out and help us to go out and do these rescues and get these folks to safe ground.
Sheriff?
Yes.
Do you have any idea how many more people are waiting to be rescued right now?
So here's the deal. We don't know yet, because as we gave the warning to evacuate more than 48 hours ago, everybody that was in Zone A, last night and early this morning before the surge started coming in, when Hurricane Idalia was making landfall up in the Panhandle in the Big Bend area, there were still people at home in Crystal River. There were still people at home in Homosassa and down in Chassahowitzka. So they hadn't left, and unfortunately, you know, we just don't have the assets to get out there and knock on every person's door. That's why we use Alert Citrus. That's why we use all of the mass notification systems. But we also ask the media to share that evacuation word so that folks can get out of harm's way. As we have said repeatedly as the professionals who do this for a living, the biggest threat to your safety is the water. More people die from the water that rises too fast, and unfortunately, they either have an accident, they get electrocuted, they drown, or some other thing befalls them.
How concerned are you that when you're able to get to every corner of this county that you will find people who did not make it out of this alive?
I think that we have some concerns about that, but we just don't know what those numbers might be. But I will tell you, as part of our damage assessment and the recovery efforts, now we are going to have to go and hit every property, and we're going to have to, you know, rely upon the Division of Emergency Management and some of our FEMA partners to come in and help us do that, to get upon those houses, because there's 18,000 residents in flood zone A. It's a lot of folks.
No fatalities reported so far?
So,
No fatalities so far?
we have no fatalities reported thus far, but we do have one citizen who touched an electrified wire and sustained a very serious injury. That person was brought out and taken to the hospital to obtain medical treatment, but I don't know what the status of that individual is yet. That was a great question.
And what is the deepest that you've seen?
I've seen water that's over 4 feet out there, and I told some of you earlier when we were talking, I've never seen a dumpster floating down Highway 19, but I saw 2 of those today. And I also saw a couch floating in the middle of US 19, heading south from the City Hall area, going down towards the intersection right down here at 44. So we've seen a lot of unusual things. And of course, some folks have seen water moccasins, rattlesnakes, and of course some alligators, some very large ones that got displaced when the water came up. And something I haven't mentioned before, but we're very keenly cognizant of, and we're going to talk to our partners here and also our partners at the Florida Marine Aquarium. We fully anticipate some manatees might end up stranded when the water goes out, just like what happened a couple of years ago with Irma, just like what we saw when Hermine came in back in 2016. So we'll have some news updates for you on that. And of course, you know, those are protected animals, they're very precious animals, and they're part of the fabric of our community that makes Citrus County one of the most unique places in the entire world to come out and enjoy the things that we normally have to offer on a beautiful blue sky, sunshiny day.
Sheriff, how frustrating is it that you, year after year with these storms, have to beg people to evacuate from these mandatory evacuations, and here you are rescuing so many today?
Well, we see a lot of irony in this work, okay? Every single day there's a phenomenal amount of irony, and we warn people. We live in God's paradise here in Florida, and we know that 6 months out of the year we have to endure our tropical storms, the occasional hurricane that comes out. The predictions were for a number of very major significant hurricanes this year. We're not even halfway through the 2023 hurricane season. We know what we saw last year with Ian and how it turned at the last minute and made that significant landfall out there and killed a lot of people. That's probably what has happened somewhere along Hurricane Idalia's path, and unfortunately we'll be hearing about that in the days ahead. So it's enormously frustrating because there's not enough of us to go around and do everything, and when we have to divert assets away to do waterborne rescues from people who could have listened to that, and we could have been out on the highway protecting our citizens, blocking off roads, and also protecting our businesses and talking to those business owners, letting them know the things that we're seeing firsthand. We can't do that. I've got 60 people on patrol right now on day shift, and every one of them is gainfully employed, and we're stretched very thin. So that's why it's absolutely critical that we continue to be the great state of Florida. We back the blue, we back all of our first responders, and we leverage every opportunity to thank those men and women who are out there. During the height of this flooding here today, I've had people going out doing everything that they can to make people feel safe and let them know that we care about them. We're going to do everything to take care of them. Even though 48 hours ago we issued a warning and said, please evacuate flood zone A. We're taking what the National Weather Service tells us, and we're going upon past experiences, trying to make sure that people survive this storm and then come back and reconstitute and recover from this storm so we can get back to the things that we enjoy right here in Citrus County. Any other questions, folks?
Yeah, Sheriff, you said there's 18,000 residents who live on the
Over 18,000 that are in Zone A for our evacuation zone, and in Zone B, which butts up very closely to Zone A, there's another 12,000 folks that are in Zone B. And we still don't know how bad some other parts of the county are because we can't get to them on land. So it's made our work very difficult. But when Colonel Farrar told me last night that we had breaches over Ford Island Trail and Ozello Trail, I knew we were going to see this later today when we got to the high tide after the storm pulled way north of us and the wind shifted like they have now. And you see the significant wind that we still have pushing in from the Gulf of Mexico, keeping that water here, not letting it recede.
Sheriff, an approximate 10,000 people evacuated?
Well, we don't know. I can't hazard a guess like that because we just don't know. We gave people plenty of time. We gave them more than 24 hours of time to clear this area and make sure that they were in a safe place once the hurricane got here. But we have no idea, because here's the thing I can tell you. Our shelters are always the last resort, okay? And we had over 100 people in our shelters at the time the hurricane made landfall up in the Panhandle. I dare say we'll probably have quite a few more after the hurricane damage starts rolling in and folks go back and check some of their property, because there's a lot of folks that live over there on that side of the county. And virtually, unless you've built a home in the last couple of years and you built it very high to get above this historic type of flooding, you probably had significant damage and your home's not going to be inhabitable. Okay, thanks everybody. Miss Carmen will be back in touch with you later today and let you know if we have any other significant updates. And when we get back on the ground with a helicopter, Miss Carmen will if you give her your contact information, she will share all of the video that we get and the still photos that we get so you can use it with your news reports later.